Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about integers and opposites, not necessarily absolute values. You can cancel that out. So first we'll hit a couple vocab words. So the first one that we have is integer. So an integer is a positive and negative whole number. So make sure you're underlining positive and negative whole number. So we have a couple examples there, like -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, and so on. Other words, we're going to hit our opposite. So opposites are two numbers that are the same distance from 0. So an example is 6 and -6, or you could say -2 and +2, or -10 and +10. So let's look at integers on our number line. So on our number line, it's split up at 0, and I have my negative integers and then I have my positive integers. So with my negative integers, we just need to make sure and write off to the side that the bigger the negative, the smaller the value is. So the bigger the negative number, the smaller the value. So what I mean by that is if I borrowed money from Mr. Flores, let's say I borrowed $2. I would be negative with Mr. Flores, $2. And let's say I borrowed money from Mr. Buck. And let's say I borrowed $4. I'm negative with Mr. Buck, $4. So even though my numbers are bigger here, it's a smaller number. That's the more negative that I have. So I have more negatives there. So with negative integers, when I write negative integers, I must have that negative sign in front of the number. When I have positive integers, I do not need a positive sign in front of my numbers. So here you can tell in my positive numbers that they all do not need that plus sign in front of them. But when I'm looking at my negatives, they all have that negative in there. So I have negative, negatives, negatives, negative, negative, negative. Now we're going to look at representing situations with integers. So situations with integers, I have certain words that mean positive, certain words that mean negatives. So here on my first one, I have 9 degrees below 0. Now when I'm talking about below 0, I'm looking at my numbers that are to the left of 0. And those numbers are negative, so I have a -9 there. Then I have a growth of 2 inches. So growth, anytime you're growing anything, we're talking about positives. +2. Now I could have put that plus there. I could have left it away. The next one I have is a loss of 4 yards. So when I'm losing something or I'm going back, I have that -4. Then I have a deposit, and you got to kind of look at deposit and withdrawal if I'm talking about a bank account. Now, when I deposit money, I'm putting money into my bank account. So that is a positive $400 that I'm adding into my account. When I'm looking at a withdrawal, I'm taking money away from my account. So I have a -6. Not necessarily that my account is -6, but that I took 6 away. Now I'm going to look at 3 steps backwards. Now, when I go backwards on my number line, if I go 3 steps back from 0, 1, 2, 3, I'm at a -3. The next one that I have is 625 feet below sea level. And again, anytime it says anything about below, that is our negative number there. So -625. Then we have 2,000 feet above sea level. And when I'm above, that is my positive. So I have 2,000 feet above sea level. So just going through opposites again, when I'm looking at my opposites, It's when a number and its opposites are added together and the sum is equal to 0. So the opposite of 5 is -5 because they are both 5 units. Oops. They are both 5 units from 0. So if I go back up and I have -5, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units away from 0. +5 is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units away from 0. And the opposite of -3 is 3 because they are both 3 units from 0. So here we're going to order these rational numbers. So we've been talking about ordering rational numbers with fractions and decimals. So now I just want to put them on a number line. Here there was a little typo. This should be -2. And again, I have my opposites there. Now we need to fill in our other numbers. So if I have 0 right in the middle and I have 2 here, halfway would be about here. So that would be 1. The opposite of 1 would give me -1. Now my halfway between 0 and 1 is 1/2, and halfway between 0 and -1 would be -1/2. Now between the halves, if I wanted to, I can look at quarters. So if I'm looking at a circle or a pizza and I take half, if I wanted to know this middle piece, I would take half of half, which is 1/4. And the opposite of that, which would be -1/4. So here, I want to change these numbers and then put them on my number line. So here I have my 3/2, which is the same as 1.5. So I could put a dot on 1.5. So here I have 1 and 1.5. The next one I have is a -3/4. So if I know that here is 1/4, here would be 2/4, here would be -3/4. The next one that I have is -7/4. So if I wanted to know -7/4, I would need to change it to a mixed number because right now it's improper. So I have 1, -1, and 3/4. So again, I'm at -1. Here is -1 and a half. And -3/4 would be a fourth over. So here I have -1 and 3/4. The next one that I have is 15/30, which we can change that to 1/2. So 15/30 is equal to 1/2. The next one that we have is -0.27. So -0.27, we kind of have to see. So if I know that -1/4 is also the same thing as -0.25, the 0.27 would kind of be about right here. So we have that 0.27 and it's negative. Then I have my 0.66. Now 0.66 is a little bit more than a half, but not too much at 1. It's about right here where we have our 0.66. And that's it. And look at the back and start working.